Heavy Heart, Open Sky. A coming-of-age drama about bullying, family conflict, identity, and learning to love yourself. Main characters. Ethan Rahman. A quiet, overweight student who has spent most of his life being mocked for his body. He hides his emotions behind humor and art, but inside he carries years of loneliness. Sara Rahman. Ethan's mother. A hard-working single parent who loves her son deeply but struggles to understand what he's going through. Malik. Ethan's longtime bully at school. Loud, confident, and admired by many classmates, but hiding his own insecurities. Cruz. A thoughtful and gentle man Ethan meets later in life. Daniel is patient, emotionally intelligent, and becomes an important figure in Ethan's journey toward self-acceptance. Chapter 1. The Boy in the Back Row. Ethan Rahman had perfected the art of disappearing. Not literally, of course. At his size, disappearing was impossible. But he had learned something just as useful: how to make people forget he existed. The trick was simple. Sit in the back row. Speak only when called on. Keep your eyes down. Laugh when everyone else laughs, even if the joke is about you. Especially if it's about you. The classroom buzzed with chatter as students filtered in for the morning lesson. Chairs scraped against the floor. Someone was playing music from their phone. Ethan slipped into his usual seat near the back wall. He placed his backpack on the floor and opened his sketchbook under the desk. Drawing helped. When he drew, the world quieted down. His pencil moved across the page, sketching a small city skyline beneath clouds. Tiny windows. Tall buildings. Little details no one else would ever notice. Look who's here. The voice hit him like a rock. Ethan didn't need to look up. Malik. Jason was the kind of person who never had to try to be noticed. Tall, athletic, with a loud confidence that filled every room he walked into. Most people liked Jason. Ethan did not. Jason dropped into the desk beside him, leaning over Ethan's shoulder. "What's that?" Jason asked. Ethan closed the sketchbook slightly. "Nothing." Jason smirked. "Drawing again." A couple of Jason's friends snickered from the row ahead. Ethan kept his voice steady. "It's just a hobby." Jason leaned closer. "You know what hobby you should try," he said. Ethan already knew. "Running." More laughter. "Maybe start with jogging," Jason added. "Before the floor collapses." The room filled with chuckles. Ethan forced a small smile, the one he had practiced in the mirror. Inside, though, something twisted. It always twisted. Chapter 2. Home isn't always quiet. That evening Ethan pushed open the door to their small apartment. "Mom," he called. In the kitchen. Sara Rahman stood at the stove stirring a pot of soup. The smell of garlic and spices filled the room. She looked tired but smiled when she saw him. "There's my favorite person." Ethan shrugged off his backpack. "How was school?" "Normal." That word carried 1,000 things Ethan never said. Sara studied him for a moment. "You sure?" "Yeah." She had learned not to push too hard. Being a single parent meant choosing your battles. "Dinner will be ready soon," she said. Ethan nodded and went to his room. His bedroom was small but comfortable. Posters on the wall. A cluttered desk filled with pencils, notebooks, and sketch pads. He sat down and opened his sketchbook again. This time he drew a person. A tall figure standing on a rooftop beneath an open sky. "Free." Ethan stared at the drawing for a long time. Then he whispered something he had never said out loud before. "I wish that was me." Chapter 3. The Breaking Point. Weeks passed. The bullying didn't stop. If anything, Jason seemed more amused than ever by Ethan's quiet reactions. One afternoon in the hallway, Jason blocked Ethan's path. "Hey, Rahman." Ethan sighed. "Yeah." Jason looked at Ethan's lunch tray. 2 sandwiches. He raised an eyebrow. "Impressive." A few students nearby waited for Ethan's reaction. Usually he said nothing. But today something felt different. Maybe it was the sleepless nights. Maybe it was the constant jokes. Maybe it was the feeling that no one, not teachers, not classmates, would ever stand up for him. Ethan met Jason's eyes. "Why do you care?" The hallway went quiet. Jason blinked. "What? Why does it matter to you what I eat?" Ethan asked. Jason scoffed. "Relax, man. It's a joke." "Yeah," Ethan said softly. "I know. For a moment Jason looked almost uncomfortable. Then the bell rang and the hallway filled with movement again. But something had shifted. For the first time, Ethan had pushed back. And it scared him. Chapter 4. Leaving. Graduation came faster than Ethan expected. When he received his acceptance letter to a university in another city, he stared at it for nearly 10 minutes before telling his mother. Sara hugged him tightly. "You're going to do amazing things," she said. Ethan wasn't so sure. But he knew one thing. He needed a new beginning. A place where no one already knew him as the fat kid in the back row. A place where he could figure out who he really was. Chapter 5. A new city. The city was bigger than Ethan had imagined. Crowded streets. Coffee shops filled with students. People who didn't know him. Didn't stare at him. Didn't whisper. For the first time in years, Ethan felt something strange. Possibility. One evening he wandered into a quiet bookstore cafe near campus. A man behind the counter looked up and smiled. "First time here?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah." The man extended his hand. "I'm Daniel." Ethan hesitated before shaking it. "I'm Ethan." Daniel's smile was warm and calm in a way Ethan wasn't used to. "What can I get you?" Daniel asked. Ethan glanced at the menu. "Coffee, I guess." Daniel poured the drink and slid it across the counter. "Welcome to the neighborhood." For reasons Ethan didn't understand yet, that simple kindness stayed with him all night. Chapter 6. First Conversations. The bookstore cafe quickly became Ethan's favorite place in the city. It wasn't just the smell of coffee or the quiet music playing through the speakers. It was the feeling of being somewhere that didn't demand anything from him. No one laughed. No one whispered. No one looked at him like he was a joke. Daniel stood behind the counter most evenings, usually reading a book between customers. One night Ethan walked in after a long day of classes. Daniel glanced up and smiled. "Hey, Ethan." The fact that Daniel remembered his name made Ethan pause. "Hey. Same drink?" Daniel asked. Ethan nodded. "Yeah." Daniel prepared the coffee while Ethan sat at a corner table. After a moment Daniel walked over and set the cup down. "You're here a lot," Daniel said. Ethan shrugged. "It's quiet." "Quiet is good," Daniel replied. For a moment they sat in silence. Then Daniel noticed the sketchbook sticking out of Ethan's bag. "You draw?" Ethan froze slightly. "Sometimes." Daniel gestured toward it. "Mind if I see?" Ethan hesitated. For years his drawings had been something private, something safe from judgment. But Daniel's voice didn't carry the mocking tone Ethan had grown used to. Slowly he pulled out the sketchbook and opened it. Daniel studied the pages. Cityscapes. Characters. Faces filled with emotion. "These are really good," Daniel said. Ethan blinked. "You don't have to say that." "I'm not being polite," Daniel said softly. "I'm being honest." For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt something warm spread through his chest. Chapter 7. Old Memories. That night Ethan lay in bed staring at the ceiling. His mind kept drifting back to Daniel's words. "These are really good." No one had ever said that about his art before. Growing up, drawing had always been dismissed as a waste of time. But Daniel had looked at his work like it mattered. The thought was both comforting and terrifying. Because if someone believed in him, he might start believing in himself. And that felt dangerous. Ethan rolled onto his side and grabbed his phone. Without thinking, he searched for Malik's name. Social media filled the screen. Jason looked exactly the same. Confident. Popular. Smiling in photos with friends. Ethan stared at the screen for a moment before locking the phone. Some things, he realized, still hurt. Chapter 8. A growing friendship. Weeks passed. Ethan and Daniel started talking more. Sometimes Ethan would stay after closing time while Daniel cleaned the cafe. They talked about books. Movies. Music. Life. Daniel was easy to talk to. He listened carefully and never interrupted. One evening Daniel asked a question that made Ethan pause. "Did you like high school?" Ethan laughed quietly. "Not really." "Why not?" Ethan hesitated. Then he said the words he rarely admitted. "I was bullied a lot." Daniel didn't react with shock or pity. He simply nodded. "That must have been hard." Ethan shrugged. "You get used to it." Daniel shook his head gently. No, he said. You survive it. Chapter 9. The Art Show. One afternoon Daniel approached Ethan with an idea. There's a student art show next month, he said. Ethan immediately shook his head. No way. Why not? Because my stuff isn't good enough. Daniel leaned against the counter. Who told you that? Ethan didn't answer. He didn't have to. Daniel sighed softly. Sometimes the voices that hurt us the most, Daniel said, stay in our heads long after the people who said them are gone. Ethan stared down at his sketchbook. What if people laugh? Daniel smiled gently. Then they're missing out. Chapter 10. Realization. The art show came sooner than Ethan expected. His hands shook as he hung his drawing on the display wall. It was the same image he had drawn months ago. A person standing on a rooftop beneath a wide open sky. When the exhibition opened, people slowly filled the room. Ethan stood nervously near the back. Then he heard someone speak beside him. This one's my favorite. Daniel stood there, looking at the drawing. Ethan's heart began beating faster. You're biased, Ethan said. Maybe, Daniel replied. But I also think it's beautiful. For a moment their eyes met. Something passed between them. Something new. Something Ethan had never experienced before. And suddenly he realized something that both excited and frightened him. He liked Daniel. Not just as a friend. Something deeper. Something real. Chapter 11. The Message. The night after the art show, Ethan couldn't sleep. His drawing had received compliments. Real ones. Not polite smiles, not forced encouragement. People had actually liked it. But that wasn't what kept him awake. It was Daniel. The way Daniel had looked at him in the gallery. Ethan sat on the edge of his bed and checked his phone. A message appeared. Daniel. Your drawing deserved that spotlight tonight. Ethan stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Ethan. Thanks for convincing me to show it. 3 dots appeared. Then Daniel replied. Daniel. I didn't convince you. You were brave enough to try. Ethan leaned back on his pillow. No one had ever called him brave before. Chapter 12. Something different. Over the next few weeks, Ethan noticed something changing. Not just between him and Daniel. Inside himself. He found himself looking forward to their conversations more than anything else in his day. He noticed small things. The way Daniel laughed quietly at his own jokes. The way he listened so carefully when Ethan talked. The way he always seemed calm, even when life got chaotic. One evening Ethan arrived at the cafe earlier than usual. Daniel was closing the shop early. Special occasion? Ethan asked. Daniel hesitated. Then he said, I was actually going to ask if you wanted to grab dinner. Ethan blinked. Dinner? Daniel smiled slightly. Yeah. For a moment Ethan's mind raced. Was this just friendly? Or something else? He nodded. Sure. Chapter 13. Dinner. The restaurant was small and warm, filled with soft lights and quiet conversation. Ethan felt nervous the entire walk there. He kept telling himself it wasn't a date. Just dinner. Just 2 friends eating. But something about the evening felt different. More personal. More intimate. They talked for nearly 2 hours. About childhood. About dreams. About the fears people rarely admitted out loud. At one point Daniel asked gently. Can I ask you something personal? Ethan nodded. Have you ever dated anyone? Ethan froze. His heart began pounding. Not really, he admitted. Daniel didn't look surprised. Instead he said softly. Sometimes figuring out who you are takes time. Ethan looked down at his hands. I think I've been scared to find out. Chapter 14. The Confession. After dinner they walked through the quiet streets back toward campus. The night air was cool. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. Finally Ethan said quietly. Daniel, can I ask you something? Of course. Ethan hesitated. Then the words slipped out. Do you think it's possible to spend your whole life pretending to be someone you're not? Daniel stopped walking. He looked at Ethan carefully. Yes, he said. It happens more often than people realize. Ethan swallowed. I think I've been doing that. Daniel's voice softened. What makes you think that? Ethan felt his chest tighten. Because when I'm around you, he said slowly, I feel something I've never felt before. Daniel didn't interrupt. Ethan continued. And I don't know what to do with it. The silence between them felt enormous. Then Daniel spoke quietly. You don't have to rush to define it. But I think I know what it is, Ethan whispered. Daniel looked at him. And in that moment everything changed. Chapter 15. The Turning Point. They stopped at the entrance to Ethan's apartment building. The street was quiet. Soft yellow lights illuminated the sidewalk. Ethan felt like his heart might explode. I've never said this out loud before, he admitted. Daniel waited patiently. Ethan took a deep breath. I think I might be gay. The word felt strange and powerful at the same time. Daniel's expression didn't change. But his voice was gentle. Thank you for trusting me with that. Ethan laughed nervously. I thought you'd run away. Daniel shook his head. Why would I do that? Ethan shrugged. People always do. For a moment neither of them spoke. Then Daniel said something that made Ethan's chest tighten again. Ethan, the truth is, I've had feelings for you for a while. Ethan's breath caught. You have? Daniel nodded. But I didn't want to pressure you while you were still figuring things out. The world suddenly felt unreal. For years Ethan had believed no one would ever see him that way. And now someone did. Chapter 16. The First Kiss. They stood there beneath the streetlight, both unsure what to do next. Ethan felt nervous. Excited. Terrified. Daniel stepped slightly closer. Is this okay? He asked gently. Ethan nodded. Yeah. Daniel reached out slowly and took Ethan's hand. The contact sent a warm rush through Ethan's chest. No one had ever held his hand like that before. For a moment they simply stood there. Then Ethan did something he never imagined he would have the courage to do. He leaned forward. Daniel met him halfway. Their first kiss was soft and uncertain. But it felt real. When they pulled apart, Ethan laughed quietly. What? Daniel asked. Ethan smiled. For the first time in my life, he said. I don't feel invisible. Chapter 17. Telling the truth. For 3 days after the kiss, Ethan felt like he was living in a dream. Everything seemed brighter. The city streets. The cafe lights. Even the early morning classes he normally hated. Daniel and Ethan agreed to take things slowly, but something had already changed between them. They walked together more often. Talked longer. Sometimes Daniel would rest his hand on Ethan's shoulder when they laughed. Each small moment felt huge to Ethan. But one thought kept creeping into his mind. His mother. Sara Rahman had always been the most important person in his life. She had sacrificed so much raising him alone. And now he was keeping something important from her. One evening Ethan sat in his apartment staring at his phone. Finally he dialed. His mother answered almost immediately. Ethan. I was just thinking about calling you. He smiled. Hey, Mom. They talked about normal things at first: school, work, groceries. But eventually Ethan's chest tightened. Mom, there's something I want to tell you. Sara's voice softened. What is it? Ethan hesitated. Then he said quietly. I'm seeing someone. There was a pause. That's wonderful, she said. What's her name? Ethan swallowed. His name is Daniel. The silence that followed felt endless. Chapter 18. Mixed reactions. Sara didn't yell. She didn't hang up. But her voice changed. Oh, she said quietly. Ethan's stomach twisted. I know it might be surprising, he said quickly. I've just been figuring things out. Sara sighed softly. I just want you to be happy, she said. But this is new for me to understand. Ethan nodded even though she couldn't see him. I know. They talked for a few more minutes before ending the call. It wasn't the rejection Ethan feared. But it also wasn't the full acceptance he hoped for. After the call, Ethan sat quietly in his room. Daniel texted him soon after. Daniel. How did it go? Ethan stared at the message before replying. Ethan. She didn't freak out. But she's confused. Daniel responded quickly. Daniel. That's normal. Give her time. Ethan smiled faintly. Daniel always seemed to know the right thing to say. Chapter 19. An unexpected face. 2 weeks later Ethan walked across campus toward the student center. The afternoon sun warmed the pavement, and students crowded the sidewalks. Ethan was texting Daniel when he accidentally bumped into someone. "Watch it," the person snapped. Ethan looked up. His heart stopped. Jason Malik. Jason looked older now. His hair was shorter, his face sharper, but Ethan would recognize him anywhere. Jason blinked in surprise. "Ethan." The name sounded strange coming from him. "What are you doing here?" Jason asked. Ethan struggled to find words. "I go to school here." Jason let out a short laugh. "No way." "Me too." Ethan felt his stomach twist. Out of all the universities in the country, Jason had ended up here. Chapter 20. Old Wounds. Jason and Ethan stood awkwardly outside the student center. Memories Ethan had tried to bury came rushing back. The jokes. The laughter. The humiliation. Jason rubbed the back of his neck. "Look. I know things were weird back in high school." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Weird." Jason sighed. "Okay. I was a jerk." Ethan crossed his arms. "That's one way to put it." Jason glanced around nervously. "I've thought about that a lot since then." Ethan didn't know how to react. Part of him wanted to yell. Another part wanted to walk away. Instead he said quietly, "Why?" Jason looked down. "Because I realized I hurt someone who didn't deserve it." Ethan studied him carefully. Jason had never apologized before. Not once. But Ethan wasn't ready to forgive. "People change," Jason said. "Sometimes," Ethan replied. Then he turned and walked away. His hands were shaking. Chapter 21. The Rift. That night Ethan told Daniel what happened. They sat together in the cafe after closing. Daniel listened carefully as Ethan explained. Seeing him again felt like stepping back into high school, Ethan said. Daniel nodded. "That kind of trauma doesn't disappear overnight." Ethan stared at the table. "What if he ruins everything again?" Daniel reached across the table and gently squeezed Ethan's hand. "He doesn't control your life anymore." Ethan looked up. "You're stronger now than you were back then." Ethan wanted to believe that. But seeing Jason had reopened wounds he thought were healed. And deep down he feared something else. What if his past still had the power to destroy the future he was finally building? Chapter 22. Rumors. It started with whispers. Ethan noticed it first in the hallway outside his class. Two students stopped talking when he walked past. Another group glanced in his direction and quickly looked away. At first he tried to ignore it. But the feeling grew stronger each day. One afternoon Ethan entered the cafe and immediately sensed something was wrong. Daniel stood behind the counter, tense. "What happened?" Ethan asked quietly. Daniel hesitated. "Someone posted something online." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What kind of something?" Daniel turned his laptop toward him. A student forum page filled the screen. At the top was a photo of Ethan and Daniel sitting together outside the cafe. The caption read, "Campus cafe owner dating a student." Below it, comments were piling up. Some mocking. Some curious. Some cruel. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Chapter 23. Confrontation. The rumors spread quickly across campus. Students began whispering whenever Ethan entered a room. Some avoided him. Others stared openly. That evening Ethan returned to the cafe, furious. "Did Jason do this?" he asked Daniel. Daniel looked surprised. "Jason? My old bully," Ethan said. "He goes here now." Daniel shook his head. "I don't know who posted it." Ethan paced the room. "This is exactly what I was afraid of." Daniel tried to stay calm. "We haven't done anything wrong. I'm your customer," Ethan said. "And I'm an adult," Daniel replied gently. Ethan rubbed his face. "It doesn't matter. People love turning things into scandals." Daniel stepped closer. "We can handle this." But Ethan's anxiety was already spiraling. Chapter 24. The Apology. The next day Ethan encountered Jason again near the library. Jason approached cautiously. "Hey." Ethan sighed. "What do you want?" Jason looked serious. "I heard about the rumors." Ethan stiffened. "You mean the ones you probably started?" Jason shook his head immediately. "I swear I didn't." Ethan studied his face. Jason seemed genuinely upset. "I actually wanted to apologize again," Jason said quietly. "For everything back in high school." Ethan crossed his arms. You already said that. I know, Jason replied. But I never really explained why. Ethan didn't respond. Jason continued. I used to pick on you because everyone expected me to be the tough guy. I thought if I made someone else the target, no one would notice my own problems. Ethan frowned. What problems? Jason hesitated. Let's just say high school wasn't easy for me either. For a moment Ethan felt confused. This wasn't the Jason he remembered. But old pain still burned too strongly. I'm not ready to forgive you, Ethan said. Jason nodded. I understand. Chapter 25. Pressure. The rumors reached the university administration within days. Daniel received an email asking to discuss professional boundaries. Even though he didn't technically work for the university, the cafe operated on campus property. That evening Daniel looked exhausted. They want me to clarify the situation, he told Ethan. Ethan felt guilt creeping into his chest. This is my fault. No, Daniel said firmly. This is just gossip. But Ethan's mind raced with worst-case scenarios. What if they shut down the cafe? Daniel didn't answer. The silence spoke loudly enough. Ethan stood up suddenly. I shouldn't have let this happen. Daniel frowned. What are you talking about? I'm talking about ruining your life, Ethan said. Daniel's voice became more serious. You didn't ruin anything. But Ethan couldn't calm down. All he could see were the consequences spreading outward. Chapter 26. The breaking point. 2 nights later the tension finally exploded. Ethan arrived at the cafe already stressed from another day of whispers and judgment. Daniel tried to comfort him. But Ethan pulled away. I can't do this anymore. Daniel blinked. What do you mean? People are talking about us everywhere, Ethan said. You're getting pulled into university drama because of me. Daniel stepped closer. That doesn't mean we give up. Ethan shook his head. You don't understand. Then explain it to me, Daniel said. Ethan's voice cracked. I spent my whole life being the reason people laugh or gossip. I'm not going to destroy your life too. Daniel's expression hardened slightly. You're not destroying anything. But I am, Ethan insisted. Daniel took a deep breath. Ethan, listen to me. But Ethan stepped back. Maybe we rushed into this. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Daniel looked hurt. You don't mean that. Ethan felt tears burning behind his eyes. Maybe we should stop seeing each other. The silence that followed was unbearable. Finally Daniel spoke softly. If that's really what you want, I won't force you to stay. Ethan couldn't answer. He simply turned and walked out into the cold night. Chapter 27. Silence. The first few days after the breakup felt unreal. Ethan walked through campus like a ghost. Classes blurred together. Students still whispered, but now Ethan barely noticed. The hardest part was the cafe. He avoided walking down that street entirely. The thought of seeing Daniel hurt too much. At night Ethan lay in bed staring at the ceiling. His phone sat beside him. Daniel's name was still at the top of their message history. Ethan read their old conversations over and over. Jokes. Encouragement. Late night talks about dreams and fears. He had pushed all of it away. And now the silence felt unbearable. Chapter 28. An unlikely conversation. One afternoon Ethan sat alone on a bench outside the library. He was sketching absent-mindedly when someone approached. Mind if I sit? Ethan looked up. Jason. Ethan sighed. You again. Jason sat down anyway. I heard about what happened with the cafe guy. Ethan's shoulders tensed. Daniel. Jason nodded. Right. Daniel. For a moment neither of them spoke. Then Jason said something unexpected. You shouldn't have broken up with him. Ethan frowned. You don't know anything about it. Jason shrugged. I know what it's like to push people away because you think you're the problem. Ethan stared at him. Jason continued quietly. My dad used to say the same thing about himself. That everyone would be better off without him. Ethan looked down. And? Jason sighed. He left when I was 15. The words hung heavy between them. For a long time I blamed myself, Jason said. Ethan didn't know what to say. Jason stood up. All I'm saying is, don't throw away something good because you think you don't deserve it. Then he walked away. Ethan sat there long after he left. Chapter 29. A visit from home. A week later Ethan heard a knock on his apartment door. When he opened it, his eyes widened. Mom. Sara Rahman stood in the hallway holding a small suitcase. I thought you might need a visit. Ethan stepped aside to let her in. I didn't expect you. She smiled gently. I know. They sat together in the small living room. Sara studied him carefully. You look tired. Ethan laughed weakly. College. But she wasn't convinced. You broke up with Daniel, didn't you? Ethan froze. How did you know? Sara shrugged. A mother notices things. Ethan sighed. I thought it would make things easier for him. Sara shook her head softly. Sometimes protecting people means trusting them to make their own choices. Ethan looked down. I was scared. Sara reached over and squeezed his hand. You've been scared for a long time, Ethan. He felt tears forming. I just don't want to be the reason someone's life falls apart. Sara's voice softened. You're not a burden, Ethan. You're my son. And anyone who loves you is lucky. Chapter 30. Realization. That night Ethan couldn't stop thinking about what both Jason and his mother had said. Two completely different people. Yet they had both told him the same thing. Stop running. Ethan grabbed his jacket and stepped outside. The city air was cool and quiet. Without fully deciding to, he found himself walking toward the cafe. The familiar warm lights glowed through the windows. His heart pounded as he approached the door. Inside, Daniel stood behind the counter closing up for the night. Ethan hesitated. Then he pushed the door open. The bell above the entrance rang softly. Daniel looked up. Their eyes met. For a moment neither of them spoke. Ethan's chest tightened. I think I made a mistake, he said quietly. Daniel didn't move. What kind of mistake? Ethan took a deep breath. The kind where someone lets fear ruin something good. The cafe was silent except for the hum of the lights. Ethan stepped closer. I'm still scared, he admitted. But I don't want to run anymore. Daniel studied him carefully. And the future of their relationship hung in that moment. Chapter 31. The reunion. Ethan stood nervously at the cafe entrance. Daniel was wiping down the counter, still tense from the breakup. Ethan took a deep breath. I want to try again, he said quietly. Daniel paused. You mean it? He asked, searching Ethan's face. I do, Ethan replied. I was scared before, but I'm done running. For a long moment, Daniel said nothing. Then he smiled softly. Okay, he said. Let's try again. Ethan's chest tightened as relief washed over him. Chapter 32. Facing the rumors. The next day, Ethan posted a message on the student forum where the rumors had started. Yes, Daniel and I are together. Yes, he is my teacher/mentor. There is nothing inappropriate here. I am an adult, he is an adult, and we are both happy. Stop speculating about our lives. Immediately, students began responding. Some supportive. Some skeptical. Some still cruel. But the point was made, Ethan was no longer hiding. He wasn't ashamed. Chapter 33. Unexpected help. Jason approached Ethan later that week. I saw your post, he said quietly. You handled that really well. Ethan frowned. You're not here to start something. Jason shook his head. No, I used to enjoy making your life miserable. But seeing you stand up for yourself now? You're stronger than I ever realized. For the first time, Ethan felt respect for Jason, not the bully from high school, but the person trying to make amends. Chapter 34. Family Matters. Sara arrived at the cafe one afternoon. She hugged Ethan tightly. I'm proud of you, she said softly. For standing up for yourself, for living honestly. Ethan smiled, a warmth spreading through him. I couldn't have done it without Daniel. Sara studied Daniel carefully. I like him, she said finally. He treats you well. That's all I care about. Ethan felt a deep sense of relief. Finally, he felt fully supported. Chapter 35. Small moments. Life slowly returned to normal. Ethan and Daniel spent weekends walking through the city, exploring art exhibits, and trying new coffee shops. Ethan continued to draw, but now he shared his sketches with Daniel and, slowly, with other people. The confidence that had once been buried beneath years of bullying began to surface. Chapter 36. Facing the past. One evening, Ethan found himself face to face with Jason again. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything back then," Jason said. Ethan nodded. "I forgive you," he said. "But I also forgive myself for letting it hurt me for so long." Jason smiled faintly. "You've come a long way." Ethan realized this closure didn't just apply to Jason, it applied to himself as well. Chapter 37. Public recognition. The university hosted a student art exhibition, featuring works from all departments. Ethan submitted his cityscape drawing. When he arrived at the gallery opening, he saw a crowd gathered around his piece, people taking photos and complimenting him. Daniel held his hand gently. "You deserve this," Daniel whispered. Ethan smiled. For the first time in years, he felt seen, not invisible. Chapter 38. Rebuilding trust. Ethan and Daniel's relationship grew stronger after the breakup. They spent long evenings talking about their fears, dreams, and past mistakes. Ethan realized trust wasn't just something given, it was something you built together, day by day. Chapter 39. New confidence. By the end of the semester, Ethan had applied for an internship at a local design studio. He felt a sense of purpose and direction he had never known before. No longer the invisible kid, he was a young man confident in who he was both as an artist and as a person. Chapter 40. The open sky. One evening, Daniel and Ethan climbed to the rooftop of their apartment building. The city stretched below them, twinkling lights like stars mirrored in the streets. Ethan held Daniel's hand and looked up at the open sky. "I never thought I'd feel this free," Ethan said. Daniel smiled. "You earned it," he said. Ethan leaned against Daniel. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." They watched the city together in silence. And for the first time, Ethan's heart was completely at peace. Chapter 41. Graduation Day. The sun shone bright on campus, and the air buzzed with excitement. Ethan adjusted his graduation gown nervously. Daniel stood beside him, smiling proudly. "You did it," Daniel said. Ethan took a deep breath. "I did it. And I didn't do it alone." Sara, standing just a few steps away, gave him a proud hug. "You've grown so much, Ethan," she whispered. For the first time, Ethan felt the weight of the past fall away completely. Chapter 42. Moving forward. After graduation, Ethan began working at a local design studio. He discovered a sense of purpose in his work. Each project reminded him that his voice and creativity mattered. Daniel continued to support him, both as a partner and as a friend. Ethan finally felt like the person he had always been, meant to be, confident, loved, and free. Chapter 43. Reconciling old friendships. One afternoon, Ethan ran into a few former classmates. Some had been bystanders during his high school bullying, some were even friends of Jason. Ethan realized he no longer carried anger for them. He nodded politely, even smiled. "I've forgiven," Ethan thought to himself. "Not for them, but for me." The sense of peace was new and profound. Chapter 44. A surprise visit. Sara visited Ethan's new apartment one weekend. "I wanted to see where my boy has been living," she said with a smile. Ethan showed her his workspace, his sketches hanging proudly on the walls, and the small rooftop where he and Daniel often went. Sara hugged him tightly. "You're living your life," she said. "And I couldn't be prouder." Ethan smiled, feeling fully understood and loved. Chapter 45. Strength in vulnerability. One rainy evening, Daniel invited Ethan to a quiet cafe. "I want you to know," Daniel said, "I love you not just for who you are now, but for everything you've been through." Ethan felt tears well up. "I was scared for so long," he admitted. "Scared I'd always be the fat kid in the back row, the one everyone laughed at." Daniel reached for his hand. "You were never invisible to me. And you're not invisible now." Ethan felt the power of being truly seen. Chapter 46. Jason's final goodbye. Jason stopped by one afternoon. "I wanted to say goodbye," he said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "I'm moving to another city for work. I just wanted to leave things right." Ethan smiled faintly. "Thanks. And I hope you find your path too." Jason nodded. "Take care of yourself, Ethan. You've earned it." Ethan watched him leave, feeling closure at last. Chapter 47. Artistic recognition. Ethan's sketches caught the attention of a local gallery. He was invited to hold a solo exhibition. As he stood before a room filled with admirers of his work, Daniel squeezed his hand. "You did this," Daniel said. Ethan smiled. "No. I did it with you." For the first time, Ethan realized that his art, his identity, and his love life were all intertwined and thriving. Chapter 48. Full circle. One evening, Ethan and Daniel climbed the rooftop together. The city stretched below, alive with lights and energy. Ethan looked at Daniel. "I'm not scared anymore," he said. Daniel smiled. "And you never have to be." They leaned against each other, watching the open sky. Ethan felt complete. No past bullying, no rumors, no fear could touch him anymore. Chapter 49. The future together. Ethan and Daniel moved into a new apartment together. Life was simple, but full. They cooked together, went on weekend trips, and often wandered the city streets at night, hand in hand. Ethan continued his artwork, gaining recognition and mentoring young artists. He had finally built a life where he was proud of himself and the love he shared. Chapter 50. Epilogue, Open Sky. Years later, Ethan stood on a hill overlooking the city with Daniel beside him. His sketches had become published works. His exhibitions had grown in number. But more than that, he had grown. Ethan reached out, holding Daniel's hand. "Remember the boy who felt invisible?" he said quietly. Daniel squeezed his hand. "He's still here. But he's strong now." Ethan looked at the open sky above them, the lights of the city beneath, and smiled. "I'm free," he whispered. "And I'm exactly who I'm meant to be." Daniel kissed him softly. And together, they watched the city, the stars, and the open sky, their hearts full of hope, love, and a future they had earned.